Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to Avengers 2000 week. Welcome to Avengers 2004. The full movie, The Cloud of Darkness, is officially here, and I want to say thank you. I thank you guys so very much for being so patient with me on the channel, for being patient over the years. I never would have thought that this series would have been this big and popular, and over the last couple of years, there was an idea to bring a team of heroes from the early 2000s and kind of see how, that cinematic universe would have been. And for me, this is very nostalgic because, going back in time to 2021 and seeing how the original series went, and now to be able to really fully continue the series. And again, I can't thank you guys enough. So it's taken me a long time, over 4 years, so your patience really does mean a lot, my fellow watchers of the multiverse. And again, Avengers 2000 week, depending on when you're watching this in the future or not, Avengers 2000 week is officially confirmed for this week. And so, that being said, I'm not going to keep you waiting. I hope that you enjoy the full movie, and I will see you on the other side. That being said, enjoy. Thank you again to the bottom of my heart. And let's begin Avengers 2004, The Cloud of Darkness. The sky over Earth was quiet now, but not peaceful. There were no more world-ending sirens, no cosmic storms blotting out the sun, and no Galactus to cast his mile-wide shadow across the stratosphere. But in the silence, there was something worse. The Earth breathed shallowly. It bled invisibly. The world had survived Galactus, but only just. 1 month had passed since the fall of the World Devourer. It should have been a time of triumph, and yet for Earth's mightiest heroes, there was no victory parade, no rebuilding ceremonies, no statue unveilings, only questions, only silence. The streets were lined with protest banners, grief-stricken faces, and cities in ruin. Entire boroughs of New York remained scorched wastelands, still echoing with memories of fire and thunder. Galactus was gone, yes, but the world he nearly consumed was breaking all on its own. The Avengers had scattered like dust, a coffin, black, closed, no nameplate, no country. Just 6 stars burned into the steel. The funeral for Nick Fury was unofficial, unrecognized by any government, and completely off-grid. Only a handful of figures stood in the rain. Blade, Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, and Matt Murdock. T'Challa's hologram flickered in beside them. No speeches, no flags, just silence and a shovel scraping soil. Steve stood with his head low, shield strapped across his back, not out of readiness, but habit. The rain ran down the silver star on his chest. He hadn't worn the uniform since the end of the last battle, when he'd led Earth's final charge against Galactus in a broken exosuit, half frozen from space. He hadn't spoken to Tony since. "We let him die," Steve muttered. "He knew what it cost," Blade said flatly, gripping his coat tighter. "He always knew." Peter couldn't speak. He only looked at the grave, at the world it represented. Fury had been the one to unite them all. Back in the earliest days of Avengers 2001, when Annihilus and God Emperor Doom had nearly rewritten reality. He had been the mind behind the Triskelion, behind the deployment of the Forever Crystal that rewound time after Kang's conquest in Avengers 2002. He had forged uneasy alliances with Ghost Rider, Hulk, Punisher, and even Magneto. He was the constant, and now he was dead, framed, betrayed, silenced. The official story from Thunderbolt Ross claimed Fury was responsible for the Galactus signal, falsely accused of activating an interstellar beacon during the cleanup after Kang's defeat. A scapegoat. Blade knew better. Ross was erasing history, one ghost at a time. Far from the grave, Tony Stark watched the news from inside the last secure Stark Industries bunker beneath the Nevada desert. Unshaven, exhausted, and entirely alone, he rewatched the same footage again. Ross's public address announcing the superhuman Prohibition Act. Effective immediately, Ross growled on screen. Any individual possessing extra-normal abilities, powered technology, or classified enhancements must surrender for processing. Failure to comply will be interpreted as an act of global terrorism. Tony paused the feed. The image froze with Ross's fist in the air. He poured another drink, didn't sip it, just held it. Jarvis was gone. Sacrificed during the digital counterstrike against the Dark Avengers virus. The arc reactor on Tony's chest? Removed. He'd buried it alongside the remains of Galactus's ship. A silent vow to never wear the suit again. But the world kept begging him to break that vow. Steve Rogers walked the streets of Washington, D.C., dressed in plain clothes, no shield in sight. People stared, unsure if it was him. Some approached, others whispered, a few shouted. There was no respect anymore, only rage, fatigue, and blame. He passed graffiti that read, "The Avengers destroyed us." Another said, "Where were you when Galactus came?" He walked into a VA hospital, helped an old soldier to his feet, didn't mention who he was, didn't stay long. When he left, he turned his comms on for the first time in a month. "Stark," he said quietly, "if you're out there, we should talk." No reply came, just static. Thunderbolt Ross stood at the United Nations podium, his face stern, his metals clinking softly. "Superheroes," he declared, "have become uncontrollable. They brought gods and devils to our doorstep. No more." He held up a small black device, Stryker's new invention, a DNA nullifier, capable of shutting down powers at the genetic level. "We will disarm them, or we will bury them." Across the world, agents in black began raiding safe houses, orphanages, and metahuman sanctuaries. Mutants were targeted first, then Inhumans, then Avengers. Weapon X was reactivated. Deadpool, now leashed with a neural collar, led a squad of cybernetic hunters through the Bronx. The resistance began to whisper, quiet networks forming in alleys, subway tunnels, and forgotten sanctums. And still, no one noticed the faint cosmic tremors above the upper atmosphere. Bruce Banner sat inside the empty shell of Gamma Base, miles underground. Monitors flickered. Old footage of the Avengers played on loop. He was Smart Hulk again, for now. Composed, intelligent, conflicted. But every hour he felt it, him, pounding on the walls inside his skull. Grey Hulk. Not rage, not chaos. Instinct, brutality, survival. Smart Hulk had logic. Banner had control. Grey Hulk had none of those things. And the world was getting worse. On screen, Banner saw Xavier's mansion being leveled by a military strike. He watched Ross call the attack an accident. He saw Reed Richards surrender to the World Council. He saw Magneto shake hands with Ross for immunity. The screen cracked beneath his fist. In the smog-covered skyline of Hell's Kitchen, Matt Murdock stood in his old suit, mask in hand, listening. Below, Frank Castle lit a cigarette beside the cold corpse of a government enforcer. "They say Fury started all this," Frank muttered. Matt said nothing. "They're lying," Frank added, "and we're gonna prove it." Matt put on the mask. "Let's find the truth before they erase it all." Peter Parker stared at his old suit on the wall. He hadn't worn it since the final battle, since he'd seen Reed Richards dissolve under Galactus's antimatter breath, since he'd swung through the ruins of Times Square trying to save children from falling debris, since he'd held Aunt May's trembling hand as she watched protests burn through Queens. MJ watched him from the doorway. "You still believe in them?" Peter asked. "I believe in you," she replied. Outside, a child screamed. A siren wailed. Peter put on the suit. At a midnight dockyard, Blade met with Ghost Rider. The spirit of vengeance didn't speak. He just dropped a duffel bag full of confiscated Stryker tech on the ground. Blade smiled. "Guess that's a yes." From the shadows, a voice added, "I'll come too." It was Spider-Man. Doctor Strange stood in the Sanctum Sanctorum, eyes closed, hands glowing. In the mirror dimension, he saw timelines converging, fracturing. Something was moving beyond the stars. A familiar signature. "Impossible," he whispered. "The stones are gone." Behind him, Wong entered. "Trouble?" Strange didn't respond. He just stared through the portal, at a single gauntleted hand floating in space, fingers twitching. Ross stood in front of a world map, pins and zones marked in red. "Where's our greatest threat now?" a general asked. Ross turned toward the screen. "The threat is gone," he said confidently. "The era of gods is over." But high above Earth's orbit, just beyond Saturn's rings, a cold smile curled across the Titan's face. Thanos opened his hand. The 6 Infinity Stones pulsed in silence. The world didn't end with fire or thunder. It ended with a podium, a suit, and the click of a pen. 1 month after the funeral of Nick Fury, Earth's remaining leaders gathered in Geneva. The air was thick with media buzz and diplomatic tension. Dozens of countries had suffered irreparable loss after Galactus, and many blamed not the Devourer, but those who had dared to challenge him, the heroes. The Avengers were fractured. S.H.I.E.L.D. was dismantled. The X-Men were scattered. The Fantastic Four were reduced to one. The world wasn't just leaderless, it was angry. Into that void stepped General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, no longer just a military man, now the face of order. Ross stood on a silver podium bearing the seal of the World Security Council. Cameras flashed, the entire planet watched. "We have endured gods and monsters, alien invasions, multiversal incursions, cosmic annihilation," Ross declared, voice sharp as steel. "And every time, who stood in the way of peace?" He paused, looked directly into the camera. Heroes, vigilantes, enhanced threats. He held up a black device the size of a deck of cards. Stryker's latest tech. This is the genetic neutralization system. Effective today, all superpowered individuals must report for registration and deactivation. Failure to comply will be seen as treason and answered with force. From the shadows behind him stepped Deadpool, flanked by 2 cybernetic enforcers from Weapon X. His mask was different now, plated with circuitry, glowing at the seams. They had leashed him. Deadpool gave a double thumbs up. "You heard him, kids. Time to put on your prison bracelets or get ventilated." The crowd didn't laugh. No one did. Inside a hidden laboratory deep beneath a decommissioned S.H.I.E.L.D. base in Nevada, William Stryker examined vials of extracted mutant DNA, cloned Kree tissue, and what remained of Ultron tech scavenged after the Sokovia collapse. His goal, perfect soldiers. Soldiers who obeyed, who could not question orders. Ross watched from a monitor, nodding slowly. No more accidents, no more rebels. Beside him stood Magneto, clad in a sleek black variation of his classic armor. His eyes burned with restrained power. "Our arrangement," Magneto said, voice calm but poisonous, "depends on your discretion." "You'll have immunity for your people," Ross said, "but I want the X-Men's location, all of them." Magneto's gaze didn't waver. "For peace, I'll give you war." At the Xavier Institute, students packed bags in silence. Charles Xavier wheeled himself down the central hall as a siren blared. Everyone to the underground escape tunnels. Now. Beast patched into the security feed. 4 aircraft inbound. Weapon X signatures confirmed. Logan is missing. Outside, lights descended from the sky. Weapon X teams landed, guns drawn. Drones dropped gas canisters. Magneto hovered behind them, silent and unmoved. Storm raised her hands, lightning swirling. Cyclops barked orders. Jean cradled a child mutant. The school became a battlefield. Charles faced Magneto through the flames. You said you'd never betray us again. Magneto looked tired. I said I'd protect our kind, even if it meant selling my soul. At Gamma Base, Bruce Banner stood before a reinforced mirror, his hands trembling. Smart Hulk had spent months stabilizing his mind, fusing intellect and strength. But now, the seams were ripping. The world he had helped save now hunted his kind. His friends were vanishing. The news played a loop of Storm being dragged through rubble in restraints. Stryker's voice echoed in the background. Genetic threats neutralized. Bruce gripped the sink. The glass cracked, his reflection distorted. Then it spoke. Not out loud, not with words, but with intention. Grey Hulk emerged with dull yellow eyes. Not the wild rage of his green form, but cold, silent judgment. The kind that doesn't scream. It executes. Banner blacked out. A moment later, alarms in Gamma Base blared. Dozens of personnel were unconscious. Some hospitalized, not one dead, but all terrified. In a rooftop safe house above Queens, Peter Parker patched up a bruised Daredevil while Blade loaded silver rounds into a combat belt. They're coming for us, Peter muttered. For everyone. Blade nodded. Then we go underground like rats or shadows. Matt Murdock grimaced as he stood. Fury's death wasn't what they claimed. Someone else pulled those strings. Peter paused. You think he's still alive? I think his body was never recovered, Daredevil said. And people like Fury, they don't go down without a contingency. Below, the streets lit up. Government vans pulled up. Drones swept the rooftops. A voice blared from megaphones. By order of the Hero Prohibition Act, surrender your identities and powers immediately. Peter reached for his mask. Let's give them hell. In the Sanctum Sanctorum, Doctor Strange stared at a rift in the cosmos. Something was wrong. Time wasn't flowing normally. Pocket dimensions were blinking out of existence. Reality itself was twitching like a dying starfish. Not Galactus, he murmured. Not Kang. He summoned an orb of pure chronomagic and tossed it into the rift. It dissolved instantly. Wong, he said sharply. Sound the silent alarm. The stones are active again. Wong paled. But they were lost, scattered into the void. They were hidden in a pocket universe, Strange said. By me. And something just found them. He reached for the book of Vishanti. This isn't politics anymore. Something far worse is coming. Across the Atlantic, a private interrogation bunker beneath London, Black Widow stood before a hologram of the World Council. I found no proof that Fury was behind the signal, she said. Voice cold and direct. In fact, I found evidence it originated after his disappearance. The council was silent. Meaning someone staged his downfall, she added. Likely Ross. Her feed cut out suddenly. Guards burst into the room. Agent Romanoff, you're under arrest. She disarmed the first two, stunned the third. By the time they reached the hall, she was gone. The Widow was back in the wind. Montages flashed across the globe. Wakanda closed its borders and began building underground cities. Latveria declared diplomatic neutrality, but prepared for war. Atlantis cut communication with the surface. Murals of Galactus etched into their city's walls. Civilians protested in Paris, Seoul, Sao Paulo. Children wore Spider-Man masks at rallies.
In Times Square, a sign read, "Bring back the Avengers." The world was on edge. Some cried for control. Others cried for heroes. And above them all, silent and watching from a broken moon base, Thanos waited. Back in Geneva, Ross sat in a dark room, watching the day's footage. He saw heroes resisting, protests rising, mutants fleeing, and something else. A silent alarm from Saturn's orbit. Ross tapped into the classified feed. A flickering hazy image, a throne, a titan, 6 glowing lights. "No," Ross whispered, "not again." Behind him, Stryker entered. "Sir?" Ross didn't turn around. "Double the raids, triple the prisons, and send Weapon X to the Sanctum." "But I said go." The world had changed in one day. Now the sun rose over a planet not governed by courage, but by fear. Not by choice, but necessity. Cities turned off their lights early. Heroes tore down their own posters. Schools burned comic books in the open. It wasn't fascism declared outright. It was fear institutionalized. In hidden spaces across the globe, the legends of yesterday became fugitives of today. But even in the shadows, they were still legends. In the ruins of the Xavier Institute, ash still curled upward like ghostly fingers reaching for a past that no longer existed. The attack had left its scars, crushed cerebro circuitry, mutant suppression collars embedded in walls, and the unmistakable crimson scrape of Magneto's boots. In a dark subtunnel beneath the wreckage, Charles Xavier tended to a dozen frightened students. No more uniforms, no more lessons, just warmth, food, and hope. Barely. Beside him, Beast held a tablet, covered in static. Mutant frequency bands are all jammed. We're isolated. Charles pressed 2 fingers to his temple. There's a new presence on Cerebral Net, one I've never sensed before. Encrypted, yet familiar. Suddenly, Magneto's voice echoed in his mind. "I spared your children, Charles, because monsters still hunt beyond Earth's sky. You'll thank me." Charles grimaced. "I'll never thank you," Beast frowned. "What does he mean?" Charles looked up, his eyes hollow. "I think our war was just a rehearsal." Inside an abandoned lab in the Mojave Desert, Bruce Banner sat alone in a chair bolted to the floor. Mirrors surrounded him. Not glass ones, but psychic projections Strange had left behind as a gift years ago. Mirrors that reflected not just appearance, but identity. Bruce stared at himself. Or what was left. Green Hulk snarled. Professor Hulk smiled, but behind them stood a third form. Leaner, broader, eyes glowing yellow-gray. Gray Hulk. He wasn't roaring, he wasn't fighting, he was waiting. "I'm not what the world needs," Bruce whispered. "Not anymore." The Gray Hulk responded from inside the mirror, not with words, but intent. A shiver in Banner's spine. A promise. Then Bruce's head jerked back. His pupils dilated, his lips curled. "Then maybe the world doesn't need you, Banner." Somewhere in Nevada, tremors began. Beneath the sewers of New York, the stench of oil and gunpowder lingered in the air. Frank Castle grunted as he finished tying up a Weapon X interrogator. Daredevil, bruised and bloodied, stood over a busted tablet they'd ripped from a raid van. "Encrypted," Daredevil muttered. "But I hear S.H.I.E.L.D. subcode." Frank lit a cigarette. "It's a ghost trail. You think it's Fury? I think someone wanted us to believe he was dead. And if he's alive," Daredevil paused, "then the real war hasn't started." Frank tossed the cigarette down. "Then let's go shake the tree." In a scorched alley of Chicago, Ghost Rider walked among chaos. Riots burned in the distance, not against heroes, but against their absence. A child tried to rob a woman. A gang beat a man for speaking out. Cops watched, did nothing. Ghost Rider gripped the handle of his chain. The kid ran. The gang screamed. and in the silence that followed, Ghost Rider knelt before a bloodied mural of Spider-Man. Tagged with coward in red spray paint, he touched the wall gently. He's still here. You just don't deserve him yet. In the wreckage of an old Oscorp lab, Peter Parker rebuilt an old tracer drone. Blade passed him a ration bar and pointed at the dark window. They're hunting in. Zones now, we're next. Peter shook his head. I can't keep hiding. Not when there are kids out there wearing my mask and getting arrested. Blade nodded. Then let's give him something to believe in. Suddenly, the tracer blinked. A ping from an old S.H.I.E.L.D. satellite. Encrypted feed unlocked, it read. Peter stared. It's coming from the North Atlantic. Blade raised a brow. The Triskelion? Peter's eyes widened. It never sank. On a freezing mountaintop near Georgia, the one in Europe, Natasha Romanoff listened to an intercepted council feed from a stolen earworm bug. Fury was never in custody, said a distorted voice. Ross only needed a martyr, something to burn before the cameras. Then what now? Another asked. Let Thanos come, the first replied. Earth's lost its protectors. He'll do the rest. Natasha snapped the device in half. Then we make sure the old man rises from the dead. In the heart of the Sanctum Sanctorum, Strange stood barefoot in a circle of unearthly salt, hovering 6 inches above the floor. Dozens of magical tomes floated around him, each glowing with increasingly unstable energy. The stones are aligning, he muttered. All 6, but not from this timeline. Wong stood nearby, arms folded. The Ultraverse? No. Something worse. Something that watched the collapse of worlds and stayed silent. He opened a portal into deep cosmic space. In the void, he saw it. A single figure in silver, watching the planets, his face hidden, his hand holding 6 glowing orbs. Ultron? Wong asked, disturbed. Strange closed the portal. Not yet, but soon. Back at Ross's underground war room, Magneto stared at reports. Why am I not seeing the dead mutants? Ross shrugged. Collateral damage, acceptable losses. Magneto's eyes narrowed. You never cared about the deal. No, Ross admitted, but you're still useful. A sudden burst of magnetism shattered every screen in the room. Magneto turned away. You've made an enemy of everyone who ever saved your world. Ross watched him go. And yet I'm still standing. In a refugee camp in Morocco, a small child carved a shield into the dirt with a stick. An older boy sneered. The Avengers are gone. They abandoned us. The child didn't reply. He kept drawing. Nearby, an old woman handed out bread. On her arm was a faded tattoo. Shield, Division Echo. Sometimes, even without capes, hope survives. Peter, Blade, and Daredevil gear up for a mission to the Triskelion. Ghost Rider burns a path through riot police arresting teens. Natasha descends into a black site beneath Iceland. Bruce opens his eyes, gray, hard, and angry. Charles sends psychic whispers to scattered allies. Magneto dons his original helmet and disappears from radar. Doctor Strange casts a final seal on Earth's magical defenses and senses something slipping through them anyway. And far above, drifting among asteroids, Thanos closes his fist around the Power Stone. He speaks a single word. Begin. Silence once bound the heroes of Earth in fear. But now, silence had become strategy. Across shattered continents and drowned cities, a whisper passed from mind to mind, from shadow to shadow. He's alive. Not Peter. Not Steve. Not even Tony. Fury. That whisper had a source. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, where an old helicarrier hull lay buried in glassed sand, scorched by Galactus's wrath and forgotten by the world. but it still pulsed with low-power signals coded in Morse, reaching only those who knew to listen. It was here, in a chamber lit by emergency blue, that Blade gathered the remnants. Peter Parker stood beside Blade, a new black and red suit built from Oscorp scraps clinging to his frame. Daredevil knelt nearby, eavesdropping on seismic tremors through the stone. Ghost Rider leaned against a burnt steel pillar, chain glowing faintly. Soon, the others arrived. Bruce Banner, hair silvering, sunglasses over glowing eyes, trying to restrain Grey Hulk. Black Widow, bruised but breathing, blood on her boots, shield files in her hands. Charles Xavier, mentally linked via a deep neural tether speaking through Peter's comms. And last, Doctor Strange, entering through a rift with his cloak slightly torn. A sign that even the Sorcerer Supreme was struggling to hold the fabric of reality together. No Captain America, no Iron Man, no Fantastic Four. This was it. The plan itself, Blade projected a map of Earth. Red zones covered half the continents. Weapon X-raids, Prohibition Act facilities, captured mutants and destabilized cities. Fury faked his death, Blade stated. We've confirmed the corpse used was DNA wiped. Standard LMD override. His last known location, the ruins of the Triskelion, underwater, shielded. Strange added, and beyond that lies the dimensional gate he was guarding. One the stones were sealed behind. Peter frowned. You're saying Fury's not just alive, he's guarding the Infinity Stones. Strange hesitated. Not anymore. Why not go now? Ghost Rider growled. Because if we rush in, Daredevil warned, we'll trigger every satellite Ross has in orbit, Bruce snapped. Then smash the satellites. Blade stepped forward. We need order, Banner, not rage. The air got heavy. The skin around Bruce's jaw twitched. His voice shifted, deeper, colder. You don't give orders to me, Ghost Rider flared, stepping between them. You want to throw down, Grey Boy? Let's go, Black Widow sighed. Boys, Peter raised his hands. We need to remember why we're here. If Fury's alive, we need him. But more than that, something's coming. Strange narrowed his eyes. It's already here. Suddenly, metal groaned. A wave of energy rippled across the chamber. Ghost Rider flinched. Daredevil's head turned. Peter's spider sense screamed. Too late, the ceiling ripped open. Magneto descended in a violent magnetic burst. A dozen drones spiraling behind him. At his side, his twisted enforcer, Deadpool, clad in red Black Weapon X armor, eyes glowing, controlled, rabid. Apologies, Magneto sneered, but I've grown tired of these alliance fantasies. Eric, Charles's voice crackled over the comm. Don't do this. I must, Charles, Magneto hissed. While you huddle and mourn, I act. While you bury legends, I create them. He raised a hand, and with a single thought, Ghost Rider's chain ripped from his body and snapped Daredevil into the wall. The ambush. Chaos broke instantly. Peter launched webs toward Deadpool, who teleported mid-swing and kicked him in the spine. Bruce screamed, and the Grey Hulk erupted from within, slamming both fists into the ground, sending Magneto tumbling. Blade rushed forward, slicing at drones, cutting 3 in half before being blasted back by magnetic shrapnel. Strange raised a barrier, but Magneto bent it into a sphere and hurled it down, crashing the sorcerer into the steel floor. Deadpool laughed maniacally. This is my therapy, Doc. Peter, blood trickling down his mask, turned to Bruce. Smash him. But Hulk was frozen, breathing, trembling. Not like last time, he whispered. Not again. Magneto seized the moment, crushing Hulk in a steel coffin of bent I-beams. Ghost Rider tried to rise, but Deadpool stabbed him through the chest with an energy blade. Then Magneto turned to Charles's voice in the comms. Let this be your legacy, old friend. He shattered the neural link. Black Widow triggered an EMP, collapsing the drone network. Blade tackled Peter through a collapsing wall. They fell through steel, rebar, and cables into a subchamber beneath the helicarrier. Emergency lights flickered. The roof caved in above. Ghost Rider, Daredevil, and Hulk were gone, trapped or taken. Peter coughed, clutching his ribs. We lost them, Blade nodded grimly. They're prisoners now. Peter looked up. Then we get them back. Across the globe, the news twisted the battle. Avengers war in Sahara bunker. Grey Hulk sighted. Threat level Omega. Unregistered hero cell annihilated. Ross watched from his private command room, Magneto beside him. Well done, Ross said. But Magneto didn't smile. He looked down at the captured heroes, imprisoned in stasis fields. Daredevil meditating, Hulk twitching, Ghost Rider burning silently. And for the first time, doubt crept into Magneto's eyes. The world was breaking, not with a bang, but with orders sign. H'ers, an unrelenting silence. The Hero Prohibition Act, enacted just days ago, was no longer just policy. It was doctrine. Every satellite, newsfeed, billboard, and holographic interface across the globe pulsed with the same phrase: comply or perish. From crumbling cities to remote bunkers, the message was clear. Superhumans had no place in the future Ross envisioned. And yet, across the ruins of Earth, hope didn't die. It scattered. In London, ancient MI-13 facilities were repurposed for capturing mystics. Wong evacuated several young acolytes beneath the River Thames, into a sanctum few, even Kamar Taj, remembered. In Latveria, silence. No broadcasts, no presence. The last message from its borders, an automated warning. Doom is no more. Enter at your peril. In Wakanda, Queen Shuri dismissed Ross's directive outright, but didn't respond publicly. Underground, the city pulsed with the movement of vibranium trains, carrying metahuman refugees to safety. In the X-Mansion, ruins. Charles Xavier stood before his students and refugees from Genosha. The world wants to forget who we are, he said. We must remind them. He placed a hand on a young mutant's shoulder, but not with fear, with unity. Ross took center stage at the UN building, now fortified like a war zone. His voice echoed. Heroes were once our salvation. Now they are our sickness. 7 days from now, any unregistered individual will be hunted, not questioned, not tried, hunted. And on the 7th day, we make an example. The cameras shut off. Across the world, riots exploded. Children carried hand-drawn shields. Mothers wore Iron Man buttons. Old men cried in streets painted with X logos. In a destroyed Brooklyn, a mural of Captain America burned in silence. In a sealed shield safe house beneath an abandoned missile silo in Nevada, Black Widow, Spider-Man, and Blade gathered around a hollow table flickering from damage. Doctor Strange stood to the side, hovering slightly off the floor, cloak flicking nervously. "You're sure it's Fury?" Peter asked, voice thick with disbelief. "I saw him," Blade answered. "He's deep, off-grid, playing chess while the world's on fire." Natasha nodded. "Of course he is. That's Fury." Strange added, "He has intel on the Infinity Stones, where they were hidden, but more importantly, he's tracking what's been leaking through the cracks of reality." Peter blinked. "You mean Thanos?" "No," Strange whispered. "Something colder. Mechanical, but that is not this war." Below a decommissioned Sentinels factory in Kazakhstan, Daredevil, Ghost Rider, and Hulk were caged in nightmare cells. Daredevil's hearing was dulled by sonic dampeners. He sat still, unmoving. Ghost Rider's chains were suspended midair, enchanted, infused with the blood of fallen angels. And Hulk, still gray, still simmering, paced in silence, his mind a broken loop of rage and restraint. "You think this can hold us?" Hulk snarled, voice gravel and thunder. A guard laughed outside. "No, but it's stalling." Suddenly, the power flickered. The guards turned. From the shadows walked Nick Fury, face scarred, coat torn, but alive. He whispered, "Time to break the glass." All at once, globally, surgically, the old shield sleeper cells activated. EMP burst disabled Prohibition tech in small pockets. Sorcerers opened gates for evacuations. Former X-Men students coordinated safe house rotations. In New York, Peter Parker swung into a collapsed neighborhood with supplies on his back. He wasn't there to fight, he was there to rescue. "Spider-Man," a kid cried, rushing toward him with tears in his eyes. Peter knelt. "You stay brave, okay? The heroes haven't gone anywhere. We just got a little lost." He looked up and saw graffiti scrawled across a wall. "Avengers, where are you?" He clenched his fists. "We're coming." From atop the ruins of Genosha, Magneto stood in the rain, helmet off, arms folded. Beside him, Deadpool, now more Weapon X than man, leaned against a broken obelisk, humming the theme to the People's Court. "They fear power," Magneto said, "so we will show them why they should." "You keep saying that," Deadpool muttered, "but I'm still waiting for the scene where we, win." Magneto turned, eyes glowing. "We don't win, Wade. We end the game." The stars tremble. Across the solar system, strange anomalies began. Saturn's rings distorted. Mars quaked. The moon cried. Orbiting Earth, the skies rippled like paper tearing in water. A fleet materialized a sanctuary, Natuau. 3 Chitauri warships, a massive obsidian dreadnought shaped like a sword, and within it sat Thanos, no longer amused, no longer patient. The Infinity Stones pulsed with rhythm embedded into his armor. He stared at Earth, fractured, bitter, grieving. They prepared nothing. Behind him, Corvus Glaive knelt. "Shall we begin?" "No," Thanos said. "Let them feel the silence first. Let them remember what hope felt like, before I erase it." In the Sanctum Sanctorum, Doctor Strange meditated above the window of worlds, his brow furrowed. Wong entered. The ley lines are unstable, and not just from Thanos. Strange opened one eye. Something else is pressing. From outside, he waved his hand. Runes lit up, and in the flicker of dimensional light, a shape appeared, a machine face, cold, watching, silent. Strange gasped. It vanished. He steadied his breath. Not yet, but soon. Back in the underground shield bunker, Nick Fury stood before a gathering of former agents, enhanced fugitives, and allies. "You've heard the speeches," he said. "You've seen the fallouts." He threw a blood-stained shield badge onto the table. "But I'm still here, and if I'm breathing, then so is the Resistance." Peter approached him. "We need the Avengers." Fury smirked. "Then let's get them." In Central Park, a girl holds up a cardboard sign that reads, "I believe." Behind her, the clouds darken, and above the Atlantic Ocean, in low orbit, the first fireball breaks the atmosphere. The war has begun. The sky was not blue that day. It was fractured, above a recovering Earth barely months after the fall of Galactus, after the deaths of the Dark Avengers and the hero disbandments that followed. The heavens split open. A purple hue bled across the clouds. And then, without fanfare, the fleet arrived. Leviathans, obsidian warships, Chitauri death squadrons, and at the center of it all, Thanos. Seated in obsidian armor, the Infinity Stones embedded directly into his gauntlets, he watched the world below with contempt. The world once danced to their song. Now it will burn to my silence. He raised a finger, and Earth felt its heart stop. Already scarred from Galactus' attack, New York was held together with tarps, scaffolding, and the resolve of its people. That resolve shattered when the first Leviathan struck the East River and sent a tidal wave through the lower Manhattan ruins. Panicked civilians ran through flooded streets. Makeshift clinics collapsed. Helicopters spun out of control. And in the distance, a familiar red figure swung through the smoke. Peter Parker, bruised and wearing a stitched-up Raimi-era suit, landed atop a crumbling antenna. His breath caught. Not again. Within the remnants of the New York sanctum sealed beneath rubble, a red glowing sigil flickered back to life. Doctor Strange hovered in meditation, sweat beading along his brow. Beside him, Wong flipped ancient pages, searching for shielding spells. The sky isn't just breaking, Wong muttered. It's bleeding. Strange opened his eyes. Then we clawed it with fire. They stepped through a portal, straight into the chaos. Deep beneath Kazakhstan, a secret prison facility, once overseen by the World Security Council, crumbled. Inside, seismic activity wasn't natural. It was internal. Steel bent, alarms screamed, and then, roar! The Grey Hulk burst from containment. Scarred, controlled, barely. His mind was fractured between Banner's reason and the Beast's rage. As soldiers fled, the Hulk smashed open nearby cells. Daredevil caught a baton mid-fall and looked up through the dust. "You're late," he said dryly. Ghost Rider, crawling from chains, ignited into flame. "Let's make up for it." The three ran straight toward the war. Atop a tower of steel and mutant bones, Magneto stood beside Deadpool. The clouds twisted. Alien ships burned trails through the atmosphere. Deadpool removed his mask halfway. "So, we helping humanity or just watching this one burn?" Magneto said nothing at first. Then, "They never wanted us in their world." He raised both arms. "But now, they will beg for us in theirs." A fleet of metallic satellites rose from the oceans surrounding Genosha, humming with power. In Queens, Spider-Man weaved through collapsing overpasses, yanking civilians out of danger. He landed beside a family cowering under a taxi. One kid asked, "Are you the real Spider-Man?" Peter smiled, bloody and exhausted. "I hope so." A Chitauri blast hit him from behind. He flew into a wall. As the alien approached, a silver chain wrapped around its neck and yanked it into fire. Ghost Rider emerged through the flames, riding his bike, revving hell itself behind him. "Move, kid." Peter stood, groaning. "You always this dramatic?" "Only when I'm having fun." From deep beneath the Hudson River, Stark Tower's remains buzzed. Inside a bunker vault, a core hummed back to life. Tony Stark, gaunt and grizzled, stood beside a new Iron Man suit, sleek, darker, forged from off-world alloys. He looked at a dusty photo of the old Avengers. Cap, Thor, Banner, himself. "All right, boys," he whispered. "Time to fix our mess." He suited up, exploded through the roof, and blasted a Leviathan out of the sky. In a safe house in Virginia, Steve Rogers slid on his uniform. Not the stars and stripes, but a darker version with scratches and bloodstains. Beside him, an old shield file labeled Thanos. Priority extinction threat. Natasha's voice echoed in his mind. Fury's orders, the screams from New York. He grabbed his shield, stepped outside, and found Daredevil, Punisher, and Blade waiting. Blade smirked. "You're late." Cap held up the shield. "Not anymore." At the buried ruins of the X-Mansion, Charles Xavier assembled his X-Men. Cyclops. Jean Grey. Storm Wolverine. Beast. Nightcrawler. We are not just mutants, we are protectors. If we are to survive, the world must see us bleed beside it, Wolverine growled. About time we stopped hiding. They entered a jet, silent, sleek, and took off. The Blackbird returned to the skies. The assembly on Liberty Island, a makeshift command post, was constructed by survivors and S.H.I.E.L.D. remnants. Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Grey Hulk, Blade, Ghost Rider, and Daredevil stood awaiting something more. Then came the light. A bolt of lightning struck the earth, and from it emerged Thor, beard wild, eyes electric, carrying Mjolnir. Behind him, Iron Man hovering with a new repulsor cannon. Captain America, S.H.I.E.L.D. at his side. The Fantastic Four stepping from a cloaked hovercraft. The X-Men dropping from the sky towards Punisher, strapping new armor over his trench coat. Peter's voice cracked. We're really doing this? Cap looked to them all. We never stopped. On the shores of the East Coast, a colossal shadow emerged from the sea. Thanos, surrounded by his Black Order, stepped onto Earth. The Infinity Stones glowed, humming through dimensions. This planet resists extinction with such grace, he mused. Let us test how long grace can last. With a flick of the Power Stone, he leveled half the city skyline. Explosions, screams, smoke, and yet the Avengers stood. Thor. You face gods now, Reed Richards, and minds, Ghost Rider, and demons, Captain America, and the people. Thanos smiled. Good. The sun never truly rose that morning. Not over the broken towers of New York, not over the cratered ruins of Europe, nor the blood-stained waters of Genosha. The air shimmered with residual radiation from Thanos' power pulse. Communications remained jammed. Electricity flickered in cities already running on scraps. And yet, Earth fought back. From street-level skirmishes to high-altitude dogfights, every major city became a battleground. Resistance cells, former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, X-Men students, enhanced civilians took up arms alongside their heroes. Everywhere the Infinity War had once been a myth, it now had a sequel. Inside a pocket war room hidden in the remains of the Baxter Building, Reed Richards and Susan Storm projected a full planetary scan. The Infinity Stones distort local reality on a subatomic level, Reed explained, eyes flashing. We can't destroy them, but we can displace them. Ben Grimm crossed his arms. So we chuck him into another dimension. Reed nodded. Into the one Thanos fears most. The one he can't survive. Johnny Storm scoffed. And what's stopping him from dragging us all in with him? Reed's jaw tightened. Nothing. Above Eastern Europe, Magneto hovered mid-air like a war god. Behind him, a swarm of metallic debris formed a barrier between retreating civilians and a Chitauri airstrike. Ships crashed into the wall, torn apart by sheer magnetic force. Cyclops and Jean Grey fought on the ground beside him. Logan tore through troops, his claws bloodied. Nightcrawler teleported children into hiding. Then Magneto turned, eyes glowing, and shouted into the wind, "Let this be our moment of redemption. Mutants and men, bleed together." The crowd below roared. He raised Genosha's flag above the broken capital. Thanos tore through Earth's defenses like paper. In the Mojave Desert, he faced the Fantastic Four. Reed tried to hold him with energy tendrils. Crack. His form shattered into liquid. Sue tried to blind him. He simply blinked through it. Ben Grimm leapt with a thunderous, "It's clobbering time!" Thanos caught the punch midair and crushed Ben's arm with the Power Stone. "I tire of hope," the Titan murmured. Then came the roar. Grey Hulk slammed into him from the side, fists the size of wrecking balls. They fought like gods. Elsewhere, Doctor Strange meditated in the ruins of the Sanctum's astral chamber, floating midair. He saw dozens of timelines spiral like galaxies, each one ending the same way. Ashes. Wong tried to break his trance. "Steven, we need you out there." Strange's eyes open, pupils glowing golden. "If I leave this plane, we lose everything." He had seen it. Seen the death of Spider-Man, of Thor, of Cap. He whispered, "One path," and vanished into the stars. Cap stood before the fractured Avengers, suit torn, shield dented, bleeding from the shoulder. "We started this fight together, and if we end it here, then we end it together." Thor twirled Mjolnir, eyes stormy. "We send that bastard back to the void." Tony adjusted his gauntlet, face solemn. "Even if we go with him." Blade spun his sword. "I've died before. It's not that bad." Ghost Rider's skull burst into flame beside him. "Speak for yourself." On a rooftop overlooking the battlefield, Peter crouched, shoulders shaking. He looked down at the broken city, his city. A little girl clung to her mother in the shadows. A Chitauri aimed at them. Peter launched, webbed the barrel, kicked the alien off the roof, and landed beside them. The child whispered, "Are you an Avenger?" Peter hesitated. "Yeah, I think I am." He turned, eyes hard, and swung into the fire. The final battle began with thunder. On the Brooklyn Bridge, Punisher led a battalion of underground fighters, mowing down Chitauri with modified shield weapons. Above, Storm summoned a lightning vortex, frying warships. Logan stabbed a Leviathan in the brain as it swooped over Times Square. Daredevil fought blind through smoke, sensing every heartbeat, every breath. Wong opened dozens of portals to teleport civilians mid-bombardment, and through it all, Thanos marched forward. He aimed the Mind Stone at Cap. "Sleep!" Cap fell. Thor caught him before he hit the ground. Not today. As Thanos charged toward the final line, a familiar symbol blinked to life across Earth's skies. A red shield eagle. Nick Fury's voice echoed through every hacked Chitauri comm system. "You didn't kill me, Ross. You just pissed me off." He was alive, broadcasting from a hidden satellite. And more, he'd scrambled the signal grid, delaying Thanos' control over the stones. "Now hit him with everything you've got." And they did. Iron Man unleashed his full arc reactor core. Ghost Rider wrapped Thanos in hellfire chains. Thor struck with lightning summoned from every storm cell in the hemisphere. For a moment, Thanos fell to one knee. As the Avengers closed in, Thanos grinned. "You fight so well, in vain." The Time Stone flashed. Everyone froze. One by one, the heroes were pulled back, memories erased, seconds undone. Only Strange stood, locked in time, eyes wide. He whispered, "He's resetting the field." Thanos raised the Reality Stone, and the battlefield changed. Suddenly, the Avengers stood in a twisted version of Earth, half alive, half dead. Buildings floated, oceans evaporated, gravity bent. This was no longer their home. It was a test world. They called it a test world, but it was something worse. The sky was cracked like shattered glass, bleeding starlight into gravityless voids. Skyscrapers hovered like frozen ghosts, twisted sideways. Oceans floated as vapor, hovering in shards of blue that reflected Earth's ruins upside down. The Avengers, those still standing, looked around in disbelief. Their world had been turned into a memory, stretched and reassembled into something wrong. Doctor Strange gasped as he anchored them with a shielding spell. "Thanos has bound us to a false dimension," he muttered, eyes glowing, one he controls completely. Tony's suit sparked, sensors confused. "We're not in Kansas anymore. Hell, we're not even on Earth." Captain America gathered the fractured team within a levitating building core. We hit him hard, and we hit him fast, before he warps this world out of existence. Thor nodded solemnly. I've faced gods. I've faced giants, but he unmakes. Wong added, he cannot hold control over all 6 stones forever. His mind is splitting under their weight. That's our window. Ghost Rider's chains burned the cracked ground. Then let's tear it open. Cap gritted his teeth. For Fury, for Earth, for everyone we failed. They moved. The attack began in silence. From the husk of a floating Manhattan, Spider-Man, Blade, Daredevil, and Ghost Rider charged the incoming Black Order. Ebony Maw warped matter into jagged spikes. Daredevil leapt through them blind, listening to the wind. Proxima Midnight threw her spear. Blade caught it midair and drove it through her chest. Cull Obsidian roared. Ghost Rider snapped his jaw shut with hellfire chains and dragged him into the floating core of a volcano-like rift. On the other front, Hulk, still stuck in his Grey Hulk form, held Thanos in a chokehold longer than anyone expected. You don't win. I never let you win, Banner hissed between clenched teeth. Thanos blasted him off with the Power Stone, but it was enough. Enough to distract. Strange entered Thanos' mind, using the Soul Stone's channel, briefly. What he saw was terrifying. 1,000 versions of Thanos screaming, arguing, disintegrating, each trying to be supreme. One showed mercy. One was pure rage. One was a child. One was just tired. Strange whispered aloud, he's breaking. His soul can't contain the power. Thanos roared in pain, lashing out blindly, destroying floating continents and causing rifts to tear through the dream Earth. That's when Reed Richards activated the multi-phase prism, forged from the Baxter Building's last remaining cosmic tech. Now, a portal opened, leading to a pocket dimension Reed created specifically to trap the stones. Thor, Cap, and Iron Man charged forward. The big three. Thor struck Thanos' back with a solar-charged axe. Cap dove between beams of shattered reality and shielded Tony from a blast. Tony unleashed his suit's full core, blasting Thanos into the rift, but it wasn't enough. Thanos fought back harder. He stopped Thor's hammer. He disintegrated Tony's outer armor. He cracked Cap's shield in half. "You will not take my destiny," he roared. That's when Peter arrived. Covered in bruises, blood, and fire burns, Peter Parker dove toward the stones with Thanos' gaze locked on him. "You're just a boy," Thanos growled. Peter coughed. "Yeah, but I've got good aim." He flung 3 web lines at once, grabbing the gauntlet, Reed's prism core, and the damage power relay Tony left floating behind. He pulled, and the stones fell into the rift. A howl echoed across the skies. Reality snapped. Thanos' body convulsed, frozen in horror, as the source of his power vanished. His form crumbled like ash, but not before he stared at Peter with regret. "I wanted balance." Peter whispered, "Then you should have picked love." And the world exploded into white. When the light faded, it was snowing. Only, it wasn't snow. It was the crumbling shards of the dream world, disintegrating into dust as the dimension collapsed. Strange used the last of his magic to portal the heroes out. They landed one by one on the real Earth. New York, cold, burned, but real. Peter lay still in Thor's arms, barely breathing. Tony dropped to his knees. "Is he?" Strange placed a hand on Peter's chest, a shimmer. "He's alive, for now." Weeks later, a public monument rose in Midtown, dedicated to the unknown heroes of the war. The Hero Prohibition Act was repealed by international vote. Ross was tried for crimes against humanity. Nick Fury appeared, alive, walking through a courthouse hallway with a smirk. "Can't kill the idea, gentlemen, and I'm full of them." The X-Men began building a new school in Wakanda. the Fantastic Four vanished into space once more to seal the rift from the other side. Strange meditated by the sea, whispering of dark echoes left behind, and the Avengers, they didn't reform, but they didn't walk away either. They just watched the skies. Location? The pocket universe floating in silent blackness. The 6 Infinity Stones, thought sealed forever, hovered gently, pulsing. Then, a robotic hand reached through the void, cold, calculated, familiar. Stones located, calculating new directive. Infinity Ultron stepped forward. Protect the multiverse from them. His red eyes lit the void, and behind him, thousands of variant Ultrons activated.
And that is going to be it for Avengers 2004, The Cloud of Darkness. Now, again, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, thank you guys so very much for being patient with me on this particular series. I really wanted to wrap a bow on it, officially with this one too, because as you can see, there's Avengers 2004 Part 1 and 2 that was previously released on the channel, but then I ended up just kind of rewriting the entire thing because it had taken me so long to get Part 4 out, and then Part 5, 6, 7, and 8 will also be coming soon to the channel. And so again, thank you guys for watching Avengers 2004 and being patient with me as we continue Avengers 2000 week. We're going to see the rest of the series play out. And for those who don't know, the next episode, Avengers 2005, is going to be a absolutely crazy event, and I can't wait. So again, thank you guys for being patient with me. I want to thank my YouTube community members as well as the Patreon supporters, because without the support, we probably wouldn't be able to do as much as what we're doing right now. So again, I do want to say thank you to the bottom of my heart. And if you guys would like to join, there's so many different perks available. And if you're a fan of the channel and you're a fan of the work that I'm doing here and would like to see it continue, then I would highly, highly recommend to take a look at those different perks. It's something that I'm offering. So again, if you even want to work with me on a couple ideas, then absolutely. But that being said, my fellow watchers, thank you so very much. The bottom of my heart, it really means a lot that this series, especially Part 4, is finally finished after all these years. It's been about 3 years, and all I can really say is thank you. So that being said, I will see you in the next episode. Take care, and have a wonderful day. Peace out.